people with high IQ are good language learners. I disagree with this assumption. IQ can help people in learning a language quickly. It is just a plus point. But this is not only the aspect that you need to learn a language. There are many other things involved in learning a language, like taking the risk of looking foolish. Good language learners are those who are willing to look ridiculous. So, a competent learner must feel free to make mistakes and learn from them. In order to master a language which is difficult for extremely brilliant people. As an example, Francois Guyon, a language professor, chose a safer way to learn German by staying inside a four-walled room and memorizing words, phrases and grammar, but still couldn't understand single word, whether attending lectures or chatting to a German. Okay, let me tell a full story of Francois Guyon. Because just by giving example, I have to tell the full story for you to understand. To demonstrate this point, I would like to tell full Francois story. He was a French professor who flourished around the end of the 19th century. He was a Latin and Greek professor in France. Doesn't he appear to be a smart, intelligent, wise man? He was beyond doubt. A successor of Guyon is Charles Berlitz, who revolutionized language instruction. Guyon also published a number of novels. His work, The Art of Teaching Language, is recommended reading for language teachers, not because of language learning ideas given, but rather because of his own language learning experience, which is detailed in the book. So this book has many ideas which he experimented himself on himself. Once Guyon was interested in learning German, so he quit his job. He gave up his job as a professor and went to Hamburg, Germany for an entire 1 year. Sounds like a good idea? Surely. Guess what Guyon did for the first 10 days? He spent it in his room studying German. Sounds like a good idea? Not too sure. He memorized 248 unusual German verbs and wouldn't leave the room until he finished. He went into a university class to test his knowledge and listened to the professor teach in German. Do you believe he wouldn't be able to communicate in German? No, not a single word. He couldn't understand a single word of German. So, he couldn't penetrate to his understanding. He couldn't understand. Francis says, I didn't even recognize a single one of the grammatical forms that had just been learnt. I didn't recognize a single one of the irregular verbs I would just learn, despite the fact that they must have rained down in droves from the speaker's lips. so he couldn't understand a single word in the German lecture. As a result, he again memorized 800 words and the whole grammar book, including irregular verbs. After failing yet again in the university class, he went downstairs and to the store and spoke to the owner in German. What happened, do you think? He was mocked by everyone. Everyone laughed at him. He was not used to being mocked or being lousy at a language because he was a professor. He had an dignity. He had an identity. He was intelligent and had a high IQ. Following that, he attempted to learn by listening to 30,000 words from the dictionary, dialogues from literature and other sources. Alas, it didn't help him at all. He couldn't speak a single word of Germany by the end of the year. Not a single word. As a language instructor, the point of this anecdote is to emphasize that memorizing is not the ideal method for learning a language. Second, everyone wants to appear intelligent. People like Francois Gouin, for example, are accustomed to appearing smarter than their peers, than others normal people. It becomes quite difficult for such people to be mocked and laughed at, as well as to appear silly in front of others. As a result, they prefer language acquisition tactics that involves the least amount of danger of appearing ignorant, silly, ridiculous. His learning tactics are not all that horrible. However, an important component is missing: the risk factor, which is necessary for acquisition, which is to the ultimate purpose of language learning. Being smart can sometimes make you look silly, ridiculous, because that will not help you to learn language. So ignore and be ignorant and learn a language, a new language. Thank you for